Hello, good morning, friends. Today we are going to discuss about the living ones. The planet Earth is made of full of abiotic and biotic components. The biotic components are obviously the living beings present around us. The question is why do we call them living and why do you differ from non-living? Okay, so let us we understand the basic principles of life. The basic principle of life. The living beings once produced burn has to survive. For survival, it needs energy and many chemical molecules. For energy, it has to perform the metabolism. And metabolism is breaking of molecules, catabolism, and making of a new molecules, anabolism. Okay. From birth onwards, the organism shows a tendency of a growth and developments. This growth is a well orchestrated process. You might have observed the sand mounds, boulders, growths, etc. This growth is not from within the hence within and hence these are not living beings. The growth and development are not the process which have unlimited time span. At the certain point of time, the molecules organ system begins to lose their effective working and become old. This aging process of the body. So life has a continue, hence the organism tries to produce a young ones like itself. It is possible due to the reproduction, asexual and sexual. This ensures the continuity of races. Moles, steriles, workers, bees do not reproduce, yet are living. Can we call reproduction as an inclusive characteristics of life? As the body loses its capacity to perform the metabolism, the organism dies. Any living beings respond to the thermal, chemical, or biological changes in the surrounding. This unique property of living beings. There is immense diversity in living organisms since a time immemorial. Variety of organisms are living together on Earth. In order to understand the interrelationship between the living and non-living as well as between the two living beings or groups, a systematic study of this is essential. This data is also important for the various industries and agriculture, intensive laboratories and field studies in order to identify and classify the organisms from the strong base of meaningful use of the collected data. If we need to study this diversity, certain aids called the taxonomical aids can be used. This includes the herbaria, botanical garden, museum, biodiversity parks, etc. Herbarium. Two word the word herbarium, plural herbaria, was coined by Piton de Tournefort in the Book of Elements. The art of herbarium was initiated by an Italian taxonomist, Luca Ghini, 1890 to 1556. Herbaria are effective tools in taxonomic studies. A herbarium is essentially a dried plant specimen that is pressed, treated, and mounted on a standard size sheet in order to preserve it. Date, place of collection along with the detailed classifications and highlighting with its ecological peculiarities. Characters of the plants are recorded as on the same sheet. Local names and the name of collector may be added. This information is given at the lower right corner of the sheets and it is called the label. Herbary. Botanical garden. The botanical gardens are the places where the plants of the different varieties collected from the different parts of the world are grown in a scientific and systematic in vivo manner. The plants are labeled. The label board shows the scientific as well as the common name of the plants. So this is the botanical garden of Kolkata having 225 years old banyan tree preserved there. Zoological parks. Zoological parks, generally known as a zoos, in a place of interest for common man in a zoos. Wild animals are kept in a captivity. They are protected and care it taken to provide the conditions similar to their natural habitats. Exetu. In a zoo, a naturalist can study the food habits and behaviors of animals. Flora, manuals, monographs, and the catalogs are some other tools of maintaining the biodiversity records. Flora is a plant life occurring in a particular area on time. A monograph describes any selected biographical group, whereas a manual provides information keys about the identification of species found in a particular area. Conservation of biodiversity. Biodiversity is a degree of variations of the life forms in an ecosystem. Biodiversity is essential for maintaining ecological stability. The extreme complexity and density of biodiversity can be regulated, can be regarded as a measure of a health of an ecosystem. Population explosion and overexploitation of the resources has resulted in the loss of biodiversity at an alarming rate. The conservation involves the attempting to slow down, stops, or even reduce loss of essential habitats on Earth. This is known as in situ conservation. Why does the loss of biodiversity matters? For many people, it is a simple moral or ethical issues. We share our planet with a huge range of other organisms, and we have no rights to harm them. Biodiversity helps to maintain the stability in an ecosystem. Loss of one of the variety of organisms can affect the entire ecosystem. Ability again to museum. Museums are the places where a collection of preserved plants and animal species are kept. Plants and animal species may be preserved in the formalin 10% and 40% of formaldehyde in a transparent jars. Jars are labeled. Larger animals like the birds and mammals are usually stuffed and preserved. This science is known as taxidermy. Specimens in a dried form are also kept in a museum. We can even find systematic collections of the shells, skeleton animals, insects, boxes in a museum. As the biological museums in educational institutes are reference to the hubs of biodiversity studies. Biodiversity parks. It is an ecological assemblage of a species that forms a self-sustaining communities or degraded barren landscape. It is a late Uttamrao Patil Biodiversity Park, Gureghar, Mahabaleshwar. This park is the best model for conservation of the natural heritage in the urban landscape. Systematic classification of the living organism is helpful in understanding the interrelationship. In order to understand the interrelations between the organisms and maintain harmony on a planet Earth, study of biodiversity is must. Key. Key is the taxonomical aids used for the classification of the plants and animals. The key are based on contrasting characters. One of the contrasting characters gets accepted and the other rejected. The statement in a key is called the lead. Normally, the key are analytical in nature. Let us study about the classification of the living organism in the next chapter. Dr. S.P. Agarkar, one of the leading botanists of India. Dr. S.P. Agarkar was born in November 1884 in the Malwan, Maharashtra. He explored the biodiversity of the Western Ghats where he came across a species of freshwater jellyfish, which was until then only the known to be found in Africa. These findings were published in scientific journal Nature in 1912. Dr. Anna Dale, the superintendent of the Indian Museum in Kolkata, helped to Agarkar in his further endeavors to collect the preserve and conduct the microscopic examinations of the animals and plant specimens. The institute's ARI Pune have been named after his name. So find out. Human being is at a key position in maintaining the biodiversity of Earth. Find out more information about the following: laws to protect and conserve the biodiversity in India, environmental effects of ambitious projects like connecting rivers or connecting cities by constructing roads. Did bauxite mining in the Western Ghats affect the critically endangered species like black panther, different Ceropsia species, and Ariconas species? So let us we discuss some of the questions that is we come across will after learning this chapter. The first question is that what is not a property of living beings? The option is metabolism, decay, atas थोड़ा metabolism, decay, growth, and reproduction. So the decay is a part of that we can say that it is not a property of living beings, because living being can do metabolism, can they grow, and they are also reproduced, but they can't be decayed until unless they died. When they died, then decayed, and died is nothing but the non-living objects. A particular plant is strictly seasonal plants. Which one of the following is the best suited if it is to be studied in the laboratory? A particular plant is strictly seasonal plant. Which one of the following is the best suited if it is studied in the laboratory? So it is very important that the plant should be kept in a herbarium, so that we can use that to at other times whenever there is no season, particularly that most of the summer and rainy season and the winter season having lot of plants grow, because it is having the we can say having a rainy season that lot of raining continues, as well as the winter season has also a very cold weather. That is why having lot of plants grow in such conditions. But in the summer there is a drought, and at that time whenever we have to observe and learn about that specimens, so we should need to preserve them, and with the help of preservative methods. And it is very good that if the herbarium, if we can protect that specimens in the herbarium, so we can use it for a study in different seasonal conditions. A group of students found two cockroaches in a classroom. They had a debate whether they are alive or dead. Which property will help them to do so? Metabolism, growth, irritability, and reproduction. Yes. So all that things might not be observed by at that moment, but there is one thing will be observed, that irritability. Once you are supposed to touch them, it will express its action, so that we will understand that he is alive. Otherwise it will look like that it is a dead animals, but actually it's not a dead. So its irritability is a sign that which we can say that it is a living. So distinguish between the botanical gardens and zoological park and biodiversity parks, which refers to the characteristics. So the botanical gardens are such a place where that the variety of the uh, ornamental plants, medicinal plants, and the important botanical plants which is preserved and kept in study and be used for studying them. And it is a very good method to understand the nature, as well as to understand the plants, what particular the characters they expresses, and in which groups they are belongs to, and what are the uses for the human beings, as well as what are the medicinal uses. And the zoological parks is actually a preserved conditions for the animals, that they are preserved in a especially not they conserved in a very protected area, and that can be kept showcase for the peoples, because not we can see we cannot see all the animals in a wild lives, especially in the jungle or in the forest, but it is to kept there for to showcase the people the wildlife of the nature. And zoological park is also a very attractive and very important place to learn about the nature. The biodiversity park is nothing but a park where that all plants, animals, species which dwell together and live competently. So these are a very essential kind of uh, institutions where that the wildlife are preserved and helps to maintain the ecological balance. Jizamata Udyan is the famous zoo in the Mumbai, has acclimatized Humboldt penguins. Why should penguins be acclimatized when kept at a place away from their natural habitats? Ria found peculiar plants on her visit to Himachal Pradesh. What are the ways she can show it to her biology teacher and get information about it? At Andaman, authorities do not allow tourists to collect shells from the beaches. What must be so? Why do we have a greenhouses in a botanical gardens? Because greenhouses keep the temperature optimum conditions, so that if there is a very hot weather in outside, so the internal weather has not so hot, as because that the house will protect that ultraviolet rays and keep the atmospheric conditions cold and normal. What do you understand from the term like in situ and ex situ conservation? So in situ conservation, that is the conservation of plant and animal species in a control or maintained by the human activities or interference of human beings. Or ex situ conservation is about the conservation of the animals and plants in their original habitats, such as the national parks and biodiversity biodiversity parks, sanctuaries. These are the ex situ conservations where the plant animals has been kept in their natural habitats. But in situ conservation is like a zoological national parks or botanical gardens where that the specimens has been kept under the human supervisions and uh, which is under the control of human interference. Write short notes on role of human beings in the biodiversity conservations. So the biodiversity conservation is very important because it keeps the ecological balance and maintains the uh, balance of nature. So it is very important that every species has to be survive and has get all that sources what they require to survive, and that is why the biodiversity is very important to conserve, to keep the maintaining the ecological balance. Importance of botanical gardens. So botanical garden is very important to understand and learn about the different plant species and to understand their uses for the mankind's as well as to other living beings. How can you as an individual prevent the loss of biodiversity? As me the individuals, I will protect the wild animals and as well I will try to plant the so many trees and will save the nature and will not harm to the any animals or any plant species, and whenever possible I will try to saw the so many plants as well as to protect the wildlife and to as well as the birds and living beings. Okay,